When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
I had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire wrong. So then I'm doing IT, and when I go to plug the servers in, they become sentient, and they won't let us access our network unless we forward their chain emails and memes to more and more and more people, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant finds and invites best-fit candidates to apply, so you can discover talent you may have missed. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
Three, two, one. Welcome to another Britflix podcast. 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Today's guest is Clive Frayne, who was on the podcast back in early 2020, talking about his independently published book, The Process of Screenwriting. This was just before all our worlds were turned upside down by the COVID panic. Since then, I'm glad to say that he not only survived COVID in one piece, he has gone on to become an independent development producer who works in international film and theatre. As a development executive, he has now worked with some of the most influential producers in British film and European cinema. And as for the people who call him to work with them, he is best known for his innovative approach to development. His process-driven approach is literally born out of the book I mentioned at the top of the show. Welcome, Clive.
Oh, well, thanks for asking me. It's good to see you again, man. It's been a while.
Indeed it has. Indeed it has.
It has.
I guess we've seen each other's name passing by in the social media sphere and stuff, but...
Do you know what it is? You've probably noticed, I do very little social media these days. And I think it's largely because when I was doing a lot of social media, it's because my professional life was really geared around selling books, doing stuff for National Film and Television School as a tutor, those kind of things. These days, because in development work, like everything that you do is pretty much under NDA. So it means like 99% of my work is confidential. And actually social media becomes a minefield once you're in that. Also, I think I've developed an allergic sort of reaction to too much social media. It's not good for the mental health.
No, I think that's the cure. To be honest with you, less social media. There's not the right way to use social media. It's just less of it.
Yeah, and also I'm inflammatory at the best of times when it comes to like with my opinions, and who has time?
Well, look. I was drawn to you by one of your rare posts on social media celebrating 1 year of Filmutopia, your company, and then I added, would you like to come and talk about that and the 3 films? So from the top then, do you want to tell us what is Filmutopia then that you're celebrating 1 year of?
This is Filmutopia is like a zombie really, in the sense that this is the second iteration of Filmutopia. Filmutopia started off as a company I set up way back in the early sort of 2000s after splitting with from another production company.
Okay.
And it also became like a social media handle that I used in the halcyon glorious days of what was then Twitter, when it was like fun and exciting. And when social media was still a kind of quite exciting thing rather than a tedious slog. So there was quite a long social media kind of company version of Filmutopia that then went away, and I went away and did other things. And about a year ago, I was working as head of development of a development house in London called Script Compass.
Right.
Where basically what we were doing was providing development services for producers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when my time there came to an end, when I decided to kind of cut the cord there, I realized that what I wanted to do is I wanted to go back and run my company again rather than working with another company, working under somebody else's thing, because I had things that I wanted to do. So this new version of Filmutopia, which Filmutopia Limited, in order to differentiate from the original version, as registered in Companies House, has been going for a year. And it's a business that kind of does two different things. So half of the business is the development producer consultancy side, where I provide development services for producers. And when I say producers, what I mean is this is like, so the closest that I think most people have come across is that you can get people who give notes on scripts. That's not really what I do.
Okay.
But that's the closest you can get in terms of understanding what my job is.
Yeah.
But I only take on 4 clients at any given time. I only work for producers, and I only work on projects that have a route to production. And so that's kind of like how I put food on the table.
Got you.
The other half of actually, I'm just going to amend that slightly. What I actually provide is script analysis, a particular kind of script analysis. And you mentioned my book, The Process. It's kind of an evolution from the work that I did on that, but it's like got another 8 years worth of learning.
That's my next question. So that's my next question. We'll get to that.
Okay, we'll get to that. The other half of the business is I actually am developing a slate. Because I've had a lifelong passionate interest in what used to be called like micro-budget, sort of like cinema, So this is kind of movies with a budget of less than £250,000, yeah? To be perfectly honest, that is no longer considered micro-budget.
Okay.
These days, 250 is big money in independent production.
Yeah.
I was talking to people less than a couple of months ago who were looking for projects in the £50,000 range.
Yeah.
It's getting silly out there, is what I'm saying. But I've had a kind of lifelong obsession with like lower budget filmmaking. Because it's actually the Mount Everest of screenwriting. It's the most difficult to write, and it requires a skill set that most screenwriters don't have. Because you can't just tell a story, use as many locations and many actors as you like, throw in as many car chases and CGI stuff as you want. You've got to know how to make contained performance-driven cinema. You've also got to understand how films are made, how many days it will take to shoot something, how much each of the elements that you add into the story is going to cost. And you need to be able to do that without losing the cinematic quality of the film. And there are very, very few people you meet who genuinely know how to do that well. So I kind of decided so that's the other half, is basically I'm developing slates of films in that budget range, and doing that with a production partner who's basically going to handle all of the finance, production, and distribution. Yeah?
Brilliant.
So that's Filmutopia. It's both a consultancy business and a development house. Yeah, does that make sense?
Makes absolute sense. So then, having put your book into professional practice, how much has the process you wrote in that book evolved, and how much of it are you able to take from it that still remains true to this day as it did when you wrote it?
So the core ideas that the way in which most people talk about screenwriting in terms of things like structure and all of those other kinds of things. And most of the debate, most of the stuff that you hear about screenwriting that people talk about, I always thought that was too narrow and also a bit flawed. And that actually that cinema is more interesting than those kinds of reductive approaches to storytelling. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I'm anti-structure, because actually I'm not. But what it does mean is that I'm willing to kind of to not see that as the be all and end all of looking at projects. That there are some projects where the kind of traditional storytelling approaches aren't relevant, really, because it's a different use of cinema. And I think the cinema is a lot broader than most people think. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go, if that's the case, how can you then make sense of scripts? How can you tell the difference between a good story and a bad story, a good script and a bad script? And the conclusion that I came to is that a lot of this is it informs my writing, but informs more of my development work, is that actually the biggest gift you can give a writer is to help them understand exactly what made it onto the page from the point of view of a reader.
Okay.
That actually, so basically when I'm giving away the secrets for nothing, but we might as well. When I'm reading a script, I only really do two things. One of which is at the end of each scene or sequence, I write down in 2 or 3 sentences what the story beat is. So I'm reverse engineering the outline as I go. And I type that into the script as I'm reading it. And the other thing is if I read something and I don't understand what's going on, or I can't visualize it, or it doesn't make sense, then I just highlight it and say, I don't understand what's going on here. Or does this idea clash with this idea? I can't visualize this scene because I don't have the right information. Do you see what I mean? So it's actually it's like saying, as a reader, this is where I'm struggling with the words on the page. Now, that's very different from saying, I think this character should have a dog. Suggestions, which I think are a waste of time. And also, opinions. So my opinion about whether a script is good or not, in terms of from a personal taste point of view, is irrelevant. That's not what my job is. My job is to reflect back to the writer what actually made it onto the page. And the truth of the matter is that in most early drafts of script, there's a massive gap between what the writer is imagining and what actually made it onto the page.
So is this then about you ascertaining their intent more than trying to fix what's there?
Sometimes, but it's also pointing out where they haven't got their ideas across.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, after years of doing this on dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens, client after client after client after client after client, I can predict fairly accurately what the problems are going to be before I even read the script, because everybody makes the same mistakes, And the first thing is that the characters won't work properly and won't have proper arcs because the person has written a plot instead of writing a story.
Okay.
That's pretty much universal of anything that will come across your desk. That's going to be the thing. The other thing is that the writing will be descriptive rather than semiotic, and that's a failing. So the person's describing what they see in their head, and they're not really getting across why that matters. So, for instance, you kind of see it in character descriptions where somebody goes, Anna, 23, blonde. And you read that and I go, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that role couldn't be played by a brunette? What specifically about the blondness of that character is anything beyond the person describing what's in their head? What I really need to know when I meet a character for the first time is what my first impression of that character will be. Yeah? And that never happens because writers are thinking descriptively, imagining and describing rather than kind of telling the story. They're two different things. So, yeah, that's kind of it, really. It's evolved in that way, that it's become much more about that process rather than anything else, although the rest of it still pretty much applies.
Okay.
Is that interesting? I think that's interesting. Well, I mean, I've dedicated my entire life to it, so it better be interesting. It pays the rent, you know?
No, but it's interesting in the sense of that's what's evolved out of it, is that and the fact that it could, you know, it's a bold statement to call a book The Process of Screenwriting, and it not be adaptable to as time moves forward, which we all grow understanding, don't we? If we're willing, if we're always learning, then everything will grow together.
If you want to hear a difference, I mean, the biggest difference is that when I wrote The Process of Screenwriting, my primary planning tool was the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't really use them any longer. I've gone over to the board with the cards on, basically, or rather a digital equivalent of that.
Okay.
Which is like much more industry standard and like more boring. But I think the thing is the things that I needed to do by using spreadsheets, I've kind of so integrated into who I am that I don't need to go through that step to get there. Do you see what I mean?
I do, yes.
Yeah. It's kind of, it was a means to an end rather than a final solution.
Now, you described the development part of where you're developing a slate with Filmutopia. And when I came across your posts on LinkedIn celebrating the first year, you said you were chuffed at creating that pipeline of these micro-budget concepts into fully market-ready films. What films? What are the kind of work? You know, you said what budget they were, but what type of film? When you say genre, what type of films are you developing that's market-ready?
Right. So when I set up the company, I decided that I was going, this is a tricky one to talk about. Okay. So I decided, firstly, to work in those kind of budgets, you really have to hit genres. And you have to hit genres where budget is less important.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is an obvious one because it's the one that everyone hits. But basically, classy performance-driven horror was one of the genres. So, like, we're not talking about like, you know, clowns, chainsaws, you know, that kind of.
You're not doing Winnie the Pooh the slasher, are you?
No, and actually, I'm not criticizing that, but I've gotten zero interest.
I'm the same, but I know what you mean.
You know, but what I am interested in is like psychological kind of explorations of fear and just the, like, you know, explorations of the venality of human beings. I think, to me, that those are interesting subjects. So those kind of projects, and to be perfectly honest, that pretty much everyone's chasing those at the moment because the trope that horror is, you know, a safe bet in independent filmmaking has like followed that sort of sector around like a bad smell for about 30 years. But it actually holds a lot of truth, and there's like loads of good reasons for it.
I was going to say there is, because it's you're right. It is like a bad smell. So it's what do you call it?
It's a truism.
It's a truism and a curse at the same time.
It is, and it's a curse because there's a lot of people who are making horror who are making it not because they have a story to tell, but because they see it as a soft target. And I think that that's a mistake.
I agree.
I'm only interested in telling stories that I'm interested in. It's the advantage of being a very old man, you know. I don't feel the need to kind of do stuff just because it would work commercially any longer. It has to work commercially, but it also has to kind of scratch my particular itches.
Indeed.
As a storyteller. So the other one was a real departure for me, and actually it's the one that I'm probably enjoying working on more than anything else. I've rom-coms is the other one, but specialist area rom-coms in the sense that rom-coms where the protagonists, the main characters, are always like over 50.
Okay.
And there are reasons for that. It's because the relationships for over 50s are different from relationships of 20-year-olds, and therefore you get to tell a different kind of story.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those areas where it's like, as somebody who's kind of like pushing on a little bit, I feel that I've got the, and married 3 times. I've got the scars that allow me to write in that genre, like effectively. And actually, one of the first things I did when I set up Filmutopia was sit down and do something that I don't really do anymore, which was to write a spec script. It wasn't a spec script because I knew where it was going, but I wrote a rom-com script.
Okay.
And that got picked up by the 3rd person I showed it to.
Brilliant.
It was gone in like days. It only took me a couple of days to get it from getting it fresh off the typewriter to having it like in position to be produced. Which I was kind of that was a good start to the company.
I imagine.
And so so those 2, and then also sort of like gritty sort of crime is something that I'm looking at as well.
Okay.
So it's all stuff that's achievable within the budget. Do you know what I mean?
Got you. Now,
yeah, and it's all stuff where there are existing strong markets, and it's all things where actually having a star involved doesn't necessarily enhance the sales. It's all about concept. Yeah,
indeed.
Concept and how you execute it.
Now, the other half of your celebration post of a year was to say year 2, that you're out to change what people think of sub £500,000 filmmaking looks like. So what perceptions in particular you're trying to change? And when you say people, which people's mind needs changing?
Right. Okay. So this is I'm going to get you're really dropping me in this. I'm going to get so much flack for this. Okay. Right. So the thing is that sub £250,000 is your entry filmmaker position generally.
Yeah.
First time producers, first time directors, quite often first time writers.
Okay.
If you put a first-time producer, first-time writer, first-time director in a room together, the chances of them turning out something that isn't dreadful are slim. But hence the kind of pushing the budgets sort of like down because you're mitigating the risk.
Got you.
Yeah. The only problem with that is that the lower the budget, the harder it is to write. Yeah, because actually all the things that people, which is also the reason I wrote the book as well, because almost all the books that you see about screenwriting are aimed at people who want to kind of write big budget kind of stuff. And actually, when you're writing low budget stuff, the approach is completely different. Low budget, you've got to understand how many days your script is going to take to film, how many locations you're using, the cost of each thing that you include in. Mm-hmm. So what you get a lot with the lower budget stuff is people paring stuff back. And instead of getting low budget cinema, you get stuff that looks like cheap TV. And you see a lot of this.
I agree.
If you look at low budget independent films, it ends up looking like badly made television. And that's because the people who are making it are cutting the budgets in the wrong places. So because I've got this really wild background, is like I taught acting and I taught filmmaking and I've taught editing and I've directed films as well as doing all of this other stuff. Yeah. What I realized is that on low budget stuff, it's about the totality of all of those things. Yeah. Knowing like how to get the genre right, the premise right, but then also like to create like to look in different areas in terms of how you use the language of cinema. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Now, the truth of the matter is that I have some ideas about that, but not all of them I want to talk about in public.
That's okay.
Because what I'd really like is the project that I've just delivered, which has got a budget of about $200,000. If we can get that one into production in the next, say, 6 months, if we talk again in a year's time, I'd be able to say, that thing we were talking about, this film demonstrates the things that I'm talking about. Because it takes a completely unique approach to this particular way of filmmaking.
Well, it sounds like then, to answer, for me to sort of fill in the gaps in terms of your question, because the second part of my question was, which people need their minds changing? It sounds like the people making the movies are the people that need their minds changing. It's not the audience's problem, is it? This is a filmmaking problem.
No, the audience have never been presented with the kind of thing that I want to put in front of them.
Okay.
And it's like, I think what it is like people make the mistake of thinking that they have to decrease what they're doing down to fit the budget. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to make, can I give an analogy?
Yeah, please.
One of the big mistakes that people make when they're writing short films is they try to compress a feature into 22 pages, when actually what they need to do is write a good short film.
Yeah.
And short films are different from features. Yeah. I think the same is true of low budget independent films. You've got people trying to emulate 1.5 to 5 million pound films on budgets that can't sustain what they're trying to do. So you end up with stuff that's unsatisfying. Whereas actually having less money, having fewer days, having to concentrate on performance and drama and acting and a couple of other things that I don't want to talk about, but understanding how editing works and how there are ways to kind of get things done faster in different ways than is traditional. That's the thing that makes the difference. And where I've been really lucky is I happened to run into an old friend who had exactly the same train of thought about, just as I was starting Filmutopia, but he was setting up a production company and had finance. And it's kind of like we sat down and went, oh, right, we're both doing the same thing. You've got all of this stuff and I've got all of the development stuff. It sounds like, and that's where we're at the moment.
Okay, well, not to be too simplistic or reductive, but it does sound like, so I'm not, you're not having to say this, it does sound like you're saying, make the film that hits the emotional beats and don't worry as much about the spectacle that might cost a lot of money, and you'll have a good film.
That's one approach.
Yeah.
But the other approach is to think about the spectacle, but to think about it in other ways. I've got a perfect example, but I can't tell you because it's literally what we're doing in the next film.
Okay, well, I'll give an example and you can give me, so it's not, obviously I don't know what you're doing, so I can give an example of one that I think, so Jay Blakeson, when he made his debut movie, Disappearance of Alice Creed, he designed that whole film around his flat, so he could make the film in his flat. And then when the film got finance, i.e., more than the 10 grand he was expecting to spend shooting it in his flat, he didn't change it at all. He completely built a stage set of his flat in the Isle of Man where they were making the film, but the film had been designed to get the best out of what he had, in terms of
those kind of approaches are really interesting. And actually, one of the paths you can take is to kind of, and this is like kind of going back maybe to the 1970s in terms of filmmaking. One approach is to take almost like the Neil Simon approach, which is where fundamentally you're writing a play and filming it.
Yeah.
So where you make your saving is like saving your locations. The thing about doing that is that the second you do that, the writing's got to be exemplary.
Yeah, indeed.
You've got to be Neil Simon. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be Tom Stoppard. It's got to be like, that kind of generation of writers who really knew how to kind of write drama, where the cinematic surroundings don't really matter. They're just kind of like set. I mean, if you think about the classic stories, I guess 12 Angry Men, like Sidney Lumet's kind of approach is kind of like one of those kind of really where he thought. The irony, I'm about to say he thought out of the box, but actually his solution was to put everybody in a box. But it's kind of like, if you kind of take that, but then instead of only focusing in that direction, then look at every other area of production, where you kind of go, well, actually, there is a whole. Oh no, it's given. I'd be given. There are areas. Of
Clive. I think you've told us enough. Yeah. So hold on to your.
Thank you for that, because I was Yeah. My tendency is to want to share because I want films to be incredible.
Yeah. Let's come back in 12 months and we can we can talk about the example. Look, thank you for sharing that.
We talk about some films.
Yes. So I should end on that. Say congratulations of your first year of Filmutopia, and I look forward to year 2. Now we shall move seamlessly into 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Okay. The rules are simple for anyone tuning in for the first time. Clive has given me 5 film titles. I will do them in the order they've been delivered. I'll do a little bit of an intro. And then every time we hear this sound, can you hear that sound at your end, Clive?
Yeah, I can hear that. It's an exciting sound. And actually, soundtrack is one of the ways in which you elevate your film. But there you go.
Okay, well, there's a little bonus for us. So that means that 5 minutes are up, and then we move on to the next film. Okay?
Oh, perfect.
So, clock's ticking. Everything Is Illuminated from 2015 is your first choice. It is a directorial debut for Livy Schreiber and starring Elijah Wood and Eugene Hutz, frontman of Gorgo Bordello, about a young Jewish American man with the help of an eccentric local endeavors to find the woman who saved his grandfather during World War II. Fun fact, the stairs that Alex, played by Eugene, and his father drive past on their way to the train station are the famous stairs from the 1925 film Battle to Potemkin, which is wild to know. So tell me, Clive, why is this film so memorable, and why does it have an impact on you?
Right. So the first thing to understand is that this is probably one of the best films ever made, and almost nobody knows about it.
Including me, I should add, audience.
Okay. Yeah. So Liv Schreiber's best known for acting. He played Sabretooth in X-Men. He was Ray Donovan, in the TV series. He's an incredible actor, but he both wrote and directed this. It's a film that I haven't been able to watch for a few years because actually it's all set in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like pre the current difficulties, the current war situation. So it's actually, it's like I watched it over the weekend for the first time since the hostilities broke out, and I found it a very challenging watch.
Oh, really?
It's always been a challenging watch.
Okay.
The thing about this film is it manages to do something that is very, very difficult to do, in that the film is incredibly funny and well written, which is great, but Elijah Wood's great in it. Eugene Hutz is an absolute star in it, and so is the guy who plays his grandfather, and all of these kind of things. So it starts off as what you think is this very lighthearted, very stylish comedy, which is genuinely funny, genuinely witty, genuinely odd, and also has got something that I really like, which is a kind of Eastern European cinema vibe, because I'm slightly obsessed with Balkan beat music and also like the films of Emir Costa Rica. Okay. So it's got all of that, yeah. So it's a gateway drug to the films of Emir Costa Rica, even though he wasn't involved. It's got loads of influences from his filmmaking.
Oh my word.
But as the story progresses, what you realize is that this is actually a story about the killing of an entire Jewish population in Ukraine by the Nazis towards the end of the Second World War. They took a whole village, they humiliate them, they get them to spit on the Torah, and then they kind of like stand them against a wall and they kill them. And only 2 people survive. One of them is the woman that Elijah's character is looking for, who is like the sister of his father's first wife.
Okay.
Yeah. And the second one turns out to be the grandfather of Eugene. Sorry, this is spoilers, by the way.
We're okay.
The second one at the end is revealed to be the grandfather who throughout the rest of the film has been massively anti-Semitic.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And it kind of like, and I'm not going to give you, and then once you've gone through that, it then takes it up another layer and something so unexpected happens that you go, what? But it sort of makes sense. And then it goes back to being funny again at the end. Now, as somebody who's spent my entire life sort of trying to pick apart how to tell stories, how to write good cinema, how to create great roles, what this film does for anybody, I think, who is interested in that, it challenges conventional wisdom. Because conventional wisdom is that comedies are funny and tragedies are tragedies.
Yeah.
And that you can't shift seamlessly from a joke about a dog being a guide dog and not being a guide dog at the same time to the Holocaust. And what this film does is it goes, yeah, you can.
Well, there's our 5 minutes. Do you want to finish that thought?
Well, I mean, like basically, there are very few movies that I've ever seen that like take you through the range of emotions of that film.
I mean, that was a question I was going to ask you. I mean, how does it handle the tonal shift between the?
It's handled so gracefully.
Right. Okay.
And it's honestly, it doesn't. At no point do you think is this like it just works. It's an astonishing cinematic experience. Great performances, great direction, great cinematography. Ukraine was beautiful. And it was just a real revelation. Yeah, it's an amazing movie.
Okay, well, let us move swiftly on to your second choice. Going back to 1992 for a film called Leap of Faith, directed by Richard Pearse and starring Steve Martin and Deborah Winger. Tells the story, I mean, it's a lovely setup, tells the story of a fake faith healer stranded in a small town where he finds he can't fool all the people all of the time. Fun fact, just before the first show, the character Jonas, played by Steve Martin, says, always look better than they do, a comment on his fancy suit. In his autobiography, he says this as the performance advice he received as a young performer and led him to wearing his trademark white suit. So tell me, Clive, why is Leap of Faith so memorable and what impact does it have on you?
Okay, so there was... this is an odd one. Okay, because no, it isn't actually. Actually, the film itself is like why it's a good film, right, and why it means so much to me. Again, it's a film that hardly anybody knows about.
Yep, I'll include myself.
It is probably the most polished, mature performance that Steve Martin ever gives in a film.
Oh, really?
So Steve Martin is generally, I can draw an analogy between, say, for instance, Steve Martin and Jim Carrey, yeah?
Okay, yeah.
If you think of Steve Martin films, you think about him clowning around and like the big personality and particular mannerisms, yeah?
Yeah.
And Jim Carrey had the same thing, and then he did The Truman Show, yeah? For me, this is Steve Martin's Truman Show.
Wow.
It's a nuanced, nicely balanced, kind of sensitive performance, and that's partly because the writing is so good. And if you'll notice, like one of the things with these two films in particular, like my whole focus is on how good the writing is. The soundtrack's amazing, the cast's amazing. It's shot really nicely, but it's very kind of like, it's not flashy. It's not like, like big spectacle cinema of like, Close Encounters or that kind of like what cinema became. It's about what cinema still was at that period, just telling stories on film. So it's got this air of kind of competence about it in terms of the directing. It's invisible, the directing. But what makes it sort of like really sort of zing for me is the nuance in the writing. And I mean, I'm going to do a little bit of spoiling sort of again. fundamentally, yeah, like Steve Martin's character is a con man. His coach breaks down, rolls into this small town that can't afford him, but he throws up his tent anyway because, like, let's make some money rather than no money. So he starts putting on these shows.
Got you.
Now, the shows are obviously set pieces for Steve Martin to do his Steve Martin thing, and he is great as a fake preacher. Best fake preacher ever. Yeah?
Yeah.
But the scene I love more than anything else is that you've got Liam Neeson is the sheriff who can see right through him and wants to shut him down. And about like a third of the way into the film, after one of the early kind of sort of shows, he confronts him by the coach and like calls him a con man and that are all of these other kind of things. And Steve Martin's response is stunning. He just basically goes, look, you go to Broadway, right? You pay $60 to see a show, right? And it's either a good show or a bad show, right? I put on a show. I don't charge anything for the show. Of great music, like, these like profound thoughts. Like if you see it just as a show, then the fact that I'm asking for contributions is no big deal, really. And it just, for me, the fact that the writer didn't take the easy route of making the con man a black and white con man, in other words, a villain. But actually they went, this has merit. This is my stance. And actually it stands up to your criticism. And actually your criticism is kind of offensive because of these reasons that you haven't even thought about. And it's like, it's a thing that, again, that is funny. Great performance is well written, but it also makes you think. And for me, as a writer and as somebody who helps people develop stories, that kind of nuance, that kind of like moment where you take the audience,
finish your thought,
in an unexpected direction.
Yeah.
And that's is so precious. It's that, I don't know about you, but films are quite predictable a lot of the time. And whenever somebody drops something on you where you go, I wasn't expecting that, I take great delight in that. But then I also kind of want to understand the mechanism. So it's like that, basically.
Also, just because it's Steve Martin, when I first read it, I'm like, well, it must be a comedy. And then as I'm talking to you, and obviously as I'm just rereading it out, really, I suppose, I'm going, that would be an amazing noir setup as well. Like it's...
Yeah. And it's not that far off.
Okay.
And it's kind of like one of those things where I can only really think of two people who could have taken that role. And that's another thing I like, where you think only that person could have played that role. And with this one, I can see that like you would take it to Robin Williams.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but that's the only other... But actually, I don't think he would have done it as well. And I've got like a massive amount of respect for Robin Williams, but I just think it's the best performance of Steve Martin's life. And I really wish more people could see how good he really, really is.
Well, I think we can consider
that really.
Consider that news spread.
And I just love it. It just makes me feel, it's a feel-good movie for all kinds of reasons.
Brilliant. Well, look, for your final choice, we're going to jump a little further forward in time to 1997 to The Tango Lesson, directed, co-written and starring Sally Potter. It's the story of a scriptwriter coming to Paris to work on a film. There she takes up tango lessons and forms a relationship with a dancer. Fun fact, in the bathroom scene, Sally Potter's character is reading I and Thou by philosopher Martin Buber. Tell me, Clive, why is Tango Lesson so important to you?
Okay. So this is a tricky one because the first two films I told you about, I think, are just masterpieces of cinema. This isn't.
Okay.
Yeah. What this is, and actually the problem is it's very meta because it's part of the setup of the film as well. Part of the setup of the film is that Sally Potter, who is playing herself and talking about her real life, right, is working on a project where she's got writer's block.
Okay.
Right. And learning the tango and making this film is the side project she uses to distract herself while she can't get her other larger post-Orlando film away. So there's a level in which I kind of sit there and I'm watching Sally Potter kind of struggle with writer's block, and part of me sitting there thinking she really should hire me to come in and sort her out, because actually she shouldn't be struggling as much as she is. But that's a bit glib. But a part of it is kind of, it resonates because, But the reason I love this one is her acting's dreadful. And so's the acting of a lot of the cast. And some of the scenes are quite chunky from a cinema. Some of it looks almost film student level of kind of awkward. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But when she gets the dance sequences right, which is the bit that she obviously cares about, she has these moments of like brilliance. So it's one of those things where, again, it's like it brings me back to this idea that cinema should be more than polished simplicity, that actually there should be room within the canon of cinema for sort of idiosyncratic, self-indulgent side projects that kind of work and don't work. Not because that they work as big cinematic kind of pieces, but actually the process that she went through doing that was probably valuable to the work that she did. And given she's like an incredible director who makes great things, it's okay to make a weird little side project that kind of works and doesn't work, So my love for this is more the frailty and humanity of it rather than the film itself. Now, the truth of the matter, I was really torn on this third film because I was really tempted to put up Cuban Fury.
Okay.
Which is Nick Frost's film about salsa.
It is.
Right. Now, I happen to think that that's Nick Frost's best film. And I love that for the same reasons that I love Everything Is Illuminated and also Leap of Faith, because it's a film that fewer people know about, which is also incredibly well written. Like Nick Frost taught himself to salsa in order to do it. So all the dance, it's an amazing film. I don't know whether you've seen it or not, but it's an amazing film. But actually, I realized that the Sally Potter film actually is closer to things that I hold dear about the right to do something badly.
Okay.
And I'm sure she wouldn't approve of me saying that, but not everything needs to be perfect. Not everything needs to be made with the intention of being a cinematic masterpiece. Sometimes it would be nice just to make things because you care about the subject and you want to try some stuff out. Yeah. The idea of truly experimental cinema is something that we ought to be able to regain with the idea of budgets coming down, because we're actually removing the obstacles. The more you force the thing down, rather than seeing it as a restriction, the more freeing it should be to do something idiosyncratic. And there you go.
I think that's a good hook to end on. Thank you. Yeah. That was a really interesting, and it's a very interesting way of celebrating a film.
Do you know what it is? I watched it again over the weekend, and I considered like emailing you and saying, look, let's pull that one and do this one instead, because it's really difficult to talk about a film that is imperfect.
Out of interest, obviously I've not seen it. Does this solve her right? Does the Tango Lesson help her writer's block at all?
The story it's not that kind of story, and that's the other thing that I love about it. What it really explores is her passion for the subject, which was like deeply personal. And I mean, she does dance the tango. It's a thing that she cares about, and it's her kind of escape in some respects, or that's what comes across. And I think what she's ended up is like making a film about her passion, which in itself is interesting.
Well, what's really interesting about certainly about what the story is and what the story is about is that, and given the meta element that you talked about, is that I found on a recent podcast episode, I found out that Barton Fink, a film about a screenwriter, was written by the Coen brothers when they had writer's block trying to write Miller's Crossing.
Oh, that's really interesting because I love both of those films, and that makes sense. And that's the thing. It's like it's that kind of thing about it's not very often that you get an insight into somebody's writer's block side project. So that is really niche.
And I was able to watch them watching Barton Fink, knowing that's where it was coming from.
Yeah, and
it was the first time I'd seen the film since I'd been writing. So just those simple elements, like the idea of all the volume of even the smallest sound while you're trying to write can put you off because you're distracted before you even press the first key. And that when I first saw the film, that meant nothing to me at all. But then watching it this time, plus knowing that they were writing it from the point of writer's block, they literally were writing about themselves, but making a 1930s movie to
in the
deflect.
Same way that I think Adaptation is a really interesting film as well. For the same reason, is that I really adore that.
Do you believe in writer's block?
So I think the thing with writer's block is that I understand what causes it because I spent a lot of time thinking about it, or at least I know what causes it in me. And I think a lot of it is, so some of it is sort of like getting locked into perfectionism. And another part of it is trying to write scenes before you know what the story is. So I think actually the truth of the matter is that the route out of writer's block is never really to sit and stare at the empty page. It's actually to go and write something else. There's always something that you can be writing, and you always write yourself out of writer's block. But in lots of respects, you have to kind of take the diversions in order to get to the thing. So in a sense, I don't believe in it as a thing. What it is it's like that pause in the action until you figure out what you need to be doing. But the question is, you don't have to experience the block. You can actually work through it by doing other writing. And I don't mean on other projects even. You could be at work writing on other projects.
Yeah.
And, there is obvious stuff like, sometimes you just need to go for a walk or, sometimes you need to take your head out of the project. But actually 99% of the time, you can get yourself out of writer's block just by taking a step back and going, okay, what is it that I don't understand here? And usually what you don't understand is either the characters or the story.
Well, it's interesting you say that, what you don't understand, because, and I can't credit who I got this from, but apologies to that person. They just said, writing is thinking and thinking is writing. And if you can't think of what you've got to write, then it's thinking block, really, what you've got. Not because you could, if somebody said to you, write a shopping list, you could write one. So it's not writer's block you've got, it's thinking block you've got. Yeah. And so what you're describing is that kind of, how can I get my subconscious to give me the good stuff if it's not giving it me right now?
There is that. And I think the other thing is that the thing that ruins people really is they try to write the finished script on the first draft instead of just writing something and then going back and fixing it. I wish that people would embrace the idea that you've got to rewrite, that it's not a criticism of what you're doing. It's actually part of the process, that you get something down, even if it's holding text, and then you go back and fix it. And that kind of perfectionism ruins people. And also, I think the other thing that ruins people is desperately thinking that you have to be original all the time. Now, funnily enough, I've spent most of this thing saying that actually what I'm working on at the moment is looking in different directions. But the truth of the matter is when you get stuck, you go back to what you know. like you go back to trope and cliche and then like adapt that. It's a process of adapting the material. And the other thing is about understanding how the creative mind works. And the creative mind sort of like feeds on being given free rein. And I've always said, if you want one good idea, write down 20 bad ones. Because I can guarantee if you write down 20 bad ideas, deliberately bad ideas, that your brain will kick out a good one on round about idea 6 or 7. It can't help itself.
Indeed.
You know, it's that predictable.
Well, look, we have come to the end of the podcast. Thank you for sharing your first year anniversary of Filmutopia, and thank you for sharing 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life.
Well, thanks a lot for asking me, and it's been interesting. What you've done is given me the opportunity to go back and watch like 3 films that I really care about. And also hopefully introduced at least 2 of them to like a wider audience.
Indeed. No, I think you have. So yeah, it just gives me to say thank you very much for giving your time on the podcast.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. Good to see you. And I'll speak to you in a year.
Indeed. Do remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more movies that impacted your life. And if you want to, I'd love to know what your favourite movies are, what your fondest movie memories are. So please share your favourite movies that impacted your life on Twitter. Look for @LeightonRocks. And you can always leave me a review, 5-star preferably. And in your review, tell us which 3 films impacted your life. Best ones get read out on the podcast.
Hey there, it's Hugh from Podderation here. If you like today's show, why not have a listen to The Ramble? Ridiculous, irreverent, and sometimes maybe just a little bit raunchy. The Ramble is what you get when you put 2 professionally funny people in a room together and give them license to talk about anything they want underneath the umbrella of nerdy hobbies. We think you'll love it, and if you want to check it out, go to our website at podderation.com.